Thank you all for coming. My name is Bev Johnson. I'm with CFAA. And the session we're going to hear about in the next few minutes is CapEx planning and the tendering process. With us today are Phil Servinas from Reed Jones Christofferson, who's been with them for many years and has much experience devoted to assessing rehabilitation and protection of aging buildings and structures. I think that sounds really cool. And with him is Jeffrey Younghusband, who's worked for Osgood Property Management for quite many years as well, and has worked in all aspects of property management. And together they're going to share some good information about this interesting topic. And they're happy to have questions as they go. So if you have a question or you want more information on something they're speaking about, please feel free to jump in.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Jeff and I are going to sort of tag team this presentation as we go through. We have it prepared, and we'll go through the presentation, and Jeff will be popping in with some delightful comments and insightful comments about what's going on in the industry. So the first is capital planning. I know it's the last session of the day, then you guys are off to the CN Tower, but it's very important. It's a little bit boring. The session is I'm trying to lighten it up as much as possible, but it is a process session of how to capital plan and actually the process and doing the tendering. So I know a lot of you are probably terrified about doing capital planning from a perspective of your tenants getting upset and the phone calls you're going to get, and also from the money you're going to spend doing this. So hopefully this presentation will give you a little bit more insight on the planning process to make it smoother and easier for you to deal with what you know best is really managing your buildings and taking care of your buildings. So this is what we're going to be talking about today in the presentation. I'm going to do a little bit about our company and myself, but Bev basically explained everything. We'll talk a little bit about the key success for capital expenditures. I'm going to summarize a little bit on the planning process that's dealing with the building assessments, the design development, the tendering of a project, and then managing the budget, the schedule, and the team that you've put together for this. Through the process, we'll be talking a little bit about insightful lessons and pitfalls to watch out in each of the steps, and talk about a little bit of the project milestones. So that's me. As Bev said, I've been with Reed Jones Christofferson for almost 25 years now. And I've dedicated my career to the assessment and rehabilitation and renewal of buildings, structures. I'm licensed in the province of Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, over to the Maritimes, and currently I'm the president of the Building and Concrete Restoration Association of Ontario. I really do like buildings. I really do like restoring the buildings and bringing them back to what they were before. A little bit about our firm. Our firm started in 1948 in Vancouver, and we moved east as our clients moved east. We opened, we started off as a structural engineering firm, purely doing building structures. We developed some innovative processes that are still being used now, like two-way flat slabs, post-tension structures. Our Toronto office was opened in 1966, so it's been here for a long time. And we moved from actually designing structures to repairing structures as they deteriorated, all the way up to getting into buildings themselves with the roofings, the claddings, and their garages, and dealing with the whole aspects of buildings. So our core services are basically, the big one for our end of the business is building renewal and restoration. We'll deal with the parking restoration projects, with the building signs, the roofing, cladding, the podium decks. I have some examples of some of these that you've probably already seen in terms of your own lives and your own buildings. But we do get into structural engineering, sustainable design, historical structures, and parking facilities. A little bit about the firm again. We are one of the largest, if not the largest, engineering firm specializing in building sciences across the country. We have offices in all the major cities. There's 9 offices altogether. And the company is 100% employee owned. And so we have a very strong succession plan. The company will be here for another 100 years probably. I won't be, but they will be. And the company right now is about 475 people, and the Toronto office, which handles Ontario to the Maritimes, and we sort of fight with our Edmonton office about Manitoba. We give it to them in the winter, and we'll take it in the summertime. A client base, in addition to multifamily residential properties, we deal with condominiums, commercial buildings, institutional buildings, schools, municipalities, so any type of facility that needs to be renewed or repaired, we'll deal with that. Now let's talk about capital planning. So first thing I want to talk about is, I guess the philosopher in me came out when I started putting this together, the three truths about life as it relates to CapEx projects. You know what you know. And so focus on your efforts there, on what you do know. It's quite important to, from your perspective as being building owners and building managers, that's what you do best, right? The second thing is you need to know what you don't know. No, don't be afraid to ask questions, and it's really important that you find the right people that do know the information that you need, and you can trust them and get that information from them. And the third one is you need to acknowledge that you don't know what you don't know. And that's probably the most important one to make the first two work well. So out of this, like I mentioned, the time is best spent doing what you do best. And from your end of it, it's really managing your buildings, managing your tenants, and dealing with your actual core business, and trying to get away from actually dealing with the actual CapEx projects and doing the minutiae on the CapEx projects. Get the people that you can trust, but you need to educate yourself on those projects. You don't just go in there blindly. If you have the right team there, they can educate you on what you need to know. You ask the right questions, and you're going to get a sense of when the project is going to start to derail, so you can prepare for that and not have it actually have it happen. And yeah, like I mentioned, so the project team is the key. You need to get people that actually value the values you have in your properties, what you want to get out of your properties, and then hold them accountable for both the project success, the failures, and make sure it's a high standard. Agree? Disagree?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So defining capital assets and capital projects, probably everybody in the room already knows this, that your asset is not sold on the regular market every day. And it's really just an asset that you're buying and you're keeping to generate revenue, generate profit for yourselves. So it's not like you're going to the grocery store selling things or buying things. The capital projects, the difference in that is that you want to now improve your asset. It's a long-term hold, or maybe it's a short-term hold, but you want to improve it so that you can actually improve the bottom line in the property, and the financial side of things, the labor side of things, and undertake as much as you can on this property to make sure it does do what you wanted to do when you first purchased the property, or if you've had it for a long time, so it keeps generating what you want in your planning process. Capital assets requiring upgrading, rehabilitation, or renewing, there's many of them. There's actually everything in your building, pretty much. The roofing, the terraces, the glazing systems, the parking structures, the exterior pavements, mechanical electrical systems, lighting and power, emergency generators. So these are all CapEx projects, interior common elements, life safety systems, that you need to look at when you have the property, depending on your complexity of your property, and if it's a high-rise property or it's a low-rise town home type property. Elevators, podium decks, and the building structure. These are all related to CapEx projects that could happen, and you've probably undertaken them already. So the big one: why spend the money? Over the years, I've learned that our business in engineering, we've learned to understand our clients better. It's not simply to do the engineering and get it done. There's a lot more to a CapEx project, and we have to understand how our clients are driving this, what their incentive is behind doing this. And what I've learned over the years, it's really CapEx projects you want to, and the first one I've learned is that you want to reposition your building. So you want to make sure that you increase or maintain your occupancy level. Now with the new condominiums that are being built all over the cities, it's very difficult for an older property to get the rent that they want. People are moving into the condominiums, and they're renting from condominiums because they're being purchased on as an investment properties. So repositioning your property by doing capital repairs will allow you to do that. Increase the property values by refinancing. or even for a sale. So doing the CapEx projects puts you in a different position when you create your BCA reports for the banks, or when someone's looking at purchasing your property. And the biggest thing, I think, is rents. So these are long-term holds. To increase your rents, to get your Aggie approved, you need to do some kind of betterment for the property, for the tenants. And that's the spin on it. And I think it works quite well.
I just wanted to add to that, actually. Those are absolutely the reasons we would want to continually be working on capital improvements and restoring the large assets of the building, the large physical assets of the building. And what we found is going to refinancing, it's not so much, I mean, you're increasing the value of your property because you're increasing your potential to remain marketable and competitive in the market. But when it comes to a refinancing, the bankers, the lenders are really, they can either be really impressed or they can be very unimpressed. And that can impact, I guess, the value of the money you're going to get. And we found that if we're consistent with our capital projects and our capital plans, the refinancings always go very smoothly because they start to pick up pretty quick that, yeah, you guys are taking care of the asset, we're happy to loan to you. So that's been our experience.
Perfect. So just a few examples to show you the difference between properties. So this is a podium deck project. The left side is what it was like before they decided, well, maybe we should improve it. So it was just a pure concrete deck, waterproofed, and patched many times. And the right side is after we finished rehabilitating it and improving the asset. Now they have a nice landscape podium deck. People enjoy going out there in the yard. This is an exterior wall project. The photo on the right is the almost finished product. It was a progress photo, but the building on the left, 1970s building, needed a facelift. So new balcony railings, wall exteriors, new coatings, new painting. It's repositioning the property and it really makes it look sharp. And they can get down to roofing systems too. So renewing the roof on this building, residential building, where it was the terraces were actually created on the roof for each of the units, the penthouse units. And so we had to replace the roofing, so we went one step further and created a garden that people would enjoy to go out there. And lo and behold, rents increased and people enjoy it. So the CapEx process itself and the planning for a project from our side of things that you need to know, start off with the actual planning itself, the building condition assessment, and the inventory assessment. And this is really to find out what you need to do in your building. The second stage would be the actual detailed condition assessment, looking at the building now from not at 360 feet up in the air, you're looking at it now. Okay, so we identified a dozen items that we need to do. So what do we really need to do to those items? So that will be the detailed condition assessment portion. Then you get into your conceptual and your designs. What do you want the new landscaping to look like? What do you want the exterior to look like? And starting to do the design for this project and creating the drawings and specifications so that it can be put out to tender. And tendering the project to contractors who are qualified to do this type of work and getting a price back that's competitive and awarding that job to them. The next stage is the contracts. What type of contractor are you going to deal with with the contractor? Some of these projects are so large that a PO won't cut it. And using the contractor's contract that they've created probably doesn't cover you that well. So the next step is what type of contract. We'll go through a lot of these. And then the construction implementation. How's the project going to get going? Who's going to be in charge? What's the line of communication between the contractor and the owners? And who's going to make sure that you're actually getting what you paid for? And then the project closeout and commissioning. The job's done, everyone's happy. The last 3%, very difficult to finish, the paperwork, all the warranties, get all this stuff done. And then finally is the warranty periods and the maintenance moving forward on the property. So we're going to touch on those topics. I'm going to try to give you some insight on lessons learned that we've learned over the years, and also some pitfalls that occur when doing projects in each stage, things that seem to be forgotten and you run into trouble later on. So the first step of a capital planning project is to have the right team of professionals. You want to make sure you have the experience team that knows what they're doing. They're going to produce the most cost-effective solution for you. They're not simply going to go and cookie cutter and say, we did this 100 times, just do it like this. No, they're going to look at your property, they're going to understand what you need to get out of your property and create a solution for you that works both financially and in terms of solving the issue that's there. You need to be aware of the big picture. So your consultant or your project management team, you want to achieve the end product, but you also want to maintain the project budget and you want to maintain the project schedule. Someone needs to monitor this for you, and so that there is no excuses. So the first step, like I mentioned, is the capital planning. So that's the 360 feet up in the air, looking at your properties. And it could be a single property, or it could be multiple properties, depending on what your portfolio is, and coming down to each of the different elements are being reviewed, and come up with an action plan of when the systems will need renewing, how much more life you can get out of the systems. But the one thing you need to remember is that the document that's created out of this, the BCA, is really only a budget number for you. If you rely on these budgets to move forward in your planning process, you're probably going to run into trouble that the budget's not right, because they're looking at it from a visual review only. They're not getting inside to see what's going on and what really needs to be done. And so they're producing estimates that are probably plus or minus 25%. And so it's really just to give you a big picture what needs to be done in your property and all the systems. The next step would really be the correcting the problem. Like, do we have a problem to correct? You know, so we'll have to take a look, and yes, you need an assessment. Right. So the detailed condition assessment has multiple components. The first thing, you need to establish the condition of everything. So now you're talking about laboratory testing, you're talking about destructive testing, getting in so your wall elements, you're going to redo your walls, what's going on inside the walls, non-destructive testing, reviewing the documents, sampling the material, and most importantly, dealing with the property manager and the operators so that you can understand what's been happening with the properties and how they're actually been performing and what needs to be done, like what are the issues that they're seeing. You need to get comments from the end users, which your management team already has. What is the upgrades? What's the performance criteria? How long do you want this upgrade to go? What is your plan for the building? Is this a long-term hold, or is this a 2-year hold, get the work done, flip the building type thing? There's also, all that comes down to the solution that you're going to use and what are your budgets. So at the detailed planning stage, we start to put all this together, develop the renewal strategy, putting all the performance criteria together, redefining the costs based on, we have the original cost from the BCA, but what is the real cost going to be now that we have all the parameters that need to be put in? What are the specialty contractors we're going to need on this project? Are we going to need specialty glazing contractors? Are we going to need steel workers? Getting all those input from all these people and producing the document. So what we've seen over the years is, so some of these photos here I have, the one on the left, they wanted to renew the exterior of their building, but they forgot to deal with the actual structural components. They thought they could go in and EIFS it or paint it, and it costs big extras here. The second one, with regards to the glazing systems. Well, was it simply just over glazing, or did we need to get inside behind all the stops to see what was going on with the actual components? Because they did all the caulking and it still leaked. This one, window replacement, they forgot about dealing with the concrete problem. Once the windows were pulled out, well, the concrete fell off, and then that was a huge extra. Balcony railing replacement, well, can the slabs actually take your railings? Or are you just going in and doing railing replacement? Your garage, making sure you're looking at all the elements of the garage, not just simply the slabs and the waterproofing. And this one here, trying to find out who you can sue for that one. So it's just all these things need to be looked at to put the package together. If you're trying to develop your plan from your original first 360-degree look, 360 feet look at it, you're going to be into huge surprises when you move forward. The final design documents that are created after this are the ones that are going to be used for tendering. You're going to give these to the contractors and get competitive bids. They need to be as precise as possible so that you're getting a competitive bid. Everyone's bidding apples to apples. And when you're reviewing the bids when they come in, you can actually compare to see which ones they are. You know, they're also going to be going to the city for building permit. They're going to scrutinize the drawings, making sure that everything's to code. And then the actual construction, what can it be built? You know, the last thing you want to do is issue a set of documents to the contractor, he prices it, starts working on the job site and tells you, well, sorry, it can't be built. There's an extra, And so those kind of things all need to be worked out, the plans, the details, the technical specifications, and as concise as possible with no ambiguities, and you're going to avoid the costly extras during construction. Yeah. And again, the conceptual design, there's a lot of steps to it that we need to work together with both the owners, the property managers that know the properties, and a lot of the big things, coming down to the preliminary design. What do you want it to look like? What architectural renderings do you want? What do you want to convey with your property once you've done these capital expenditures? More importantly, the site. When can we work on the site? Can it be daytime, nighttime? And how are we going to phase it so that you're maintaining access to your building, your tenants can still get in your building, everyone's still enjoying their suites as much as possible. A big one is balcony projects. Closing the balconies for the summer, because it's really the summertime is the only time you can do them, it kills you. The tenants want rent rebates because they can't enjoy their properties. So how do you work through that to keep that as a minimum as possible? So those are all the things that come back. When you're dealing with mechanical, electrical, even window upgrades, are there any government incentives, rebates that you can get back from this? So we look into all those aspects of it that you should be looking into. It's not simply spending the money. There's other things you can get back out of this. And then any alternatives. Are there any alternatives to what we're doing? Any substitutions that can be put in that won't compromise what you want out of it, but maybe a little more cost effective? Sorry.
Maybe just a quick note on that. What we have found and developed over the last, say, 5 years or so is when it does come to what we would call a destructive or disruptive capital project, like a balcony, parking garage is another one, where there's a lot of back and forth with tenants. You know you're going to disrupt them, you know you're going to annoy them. But we found one of our greatest opportunities to try to overcome a lot of that, you can eliminate it, is to have, first of all, we're all required to tell the tenants ahead of time as much as we can. I believe it's 60 or 90 days. But then within about 30 days before you're going to start to either rip apart their balconies or tell them to move their cars out of the garage, is to actually have a tenants meeting and say, look, here's why we're doing this. Here's how we're going to do this. You have to be careful. Here's how long we believe it's going to take, and be generous with yourself. And by and large, I'm always impressed. There's always somebody in the crowd who's going to have a problem with it, and at least you can say, all right, well, we'll have to have a separate side conversation with this individual or these individuals. But by and large, most tenants understand it, and in fact, kind of embrace it because they realize that you're taking care of the place that they live in. So as long as you're upfront with them and honest with them and keep the door open, most people get it. And it eliminates a lot of stuff when you're halfway through the project, and eliminates, really reduces the number of people who end up taking you to the tribunal looking for a rent rebate.
Yeah. And communication.
And quite often going in with concessions already in your budget. Like if you're going to move them out of the garage, don't charge them parking. Bite the bullet. When you look at a $2 million garage project, an extra 30, 40 grand in parking, it'll save you. So that's been our experience.
And they really just want to know what's going on. You don't want to give them too much information because it's going to come back and bite you. But they really want to know what's happening, why you're doing it, and most people will accommodate. You're right. Yeah. So now you've got the documents all ready to go, and you need to tender it. So your tender package, so you have your specs and your drawings, now you have your tender package. The tender package is the document that actually outlines the type of contractor you're going to use for this, so the contractor knows how to price it. The bid form. What you want to do is make sure that you have an itemized bid form for them to price, as opposed to them coming to you and writing down, I'll do the job for $2 million. Well, no, you're going to price it our way so we can actually see what each item is and how you're pricing each item. And then you can look at it, because if you need to, let's call it value engineering and cut things out, you'll know where you're going to cut it and what the savings will be on that. And also during the process of the construction, it gives you a better sense of actually certifying the payments. What work was done? Well, that's the item that was done. This is the value to it, as opposed to the contractor coming and says, oh, I'm finished 25%. Well, you don't really know, so you really need to get the bid form in there. The tender package actually documents the bonding, the insurance, and the warranty requirements for the project. Making sure that the bonds are provided so that there's a guarantee to the contractor's work. And then the project schedule. We like to put in the project schedule based on what we believe can be done, and so then you're holding the contractor to it, as opposed to the contractor telling you, I need 16 months to finish this project. And then you're sort of open to his schedule and his timelines, and you're not sure how much workforce he's going to put on the site, and then you can deal with your tenants. If the tenants only see 2 people on the site for the next 16 months, well, they're going to be kind of upset about that. So fixing a schedule that's reasonable based on the amount of work, then I'll ensure there's enough people on site, and then your tenants are going to see that. And then the big thing is site restrictions, hours of work, where they can park, where they can't park, how the phasing is going to be done, how the site's going to be hoarded off. All this needs to be in this document so they know what they're actually pricing. So the guys are pricing all the same work. Then you call the tenders, but who do you invite? You know, ideally you want to invite a qualified contractor who can get the job done for you. Sometimes the lowest priced contractor that you know about may not be able to achieve your goal. All right? So you want to make sure you get contractors that understand the work and more importantly, understand the working in an occupied building. The actual physical work of redoing a balcony or redoing a roof or redoing a podium deck, the actual physical labor part, it's easy for them. They know how to do it. But you can get any contractor. But if you try to get a contractor that builds new buildings and a contractor that restores buildings, they have 2 different approaches to the actual program. Their costs will be different, but the guy that restores a building, he knows how to deal with, because now I'm dealing with people's homes, and people are here. The guy that builds a new construction site, there's no one there to bother him, so he just keeps going ahead. If dust is there, he doesn't care. If it's dirty all over the place, he doesn't care. If his cars are parked everywhere, he doesn't care. But in an occupied building, that's a big component of it. That's why when you look at some of the costing of building a new building and what the unit prices are, and then you look at a unit price for restoring a building, that's where the numbers are so much different, and that's where it comes from. Contractors with proven records, check their references, making sure that they actually can do it, you know. And again, understanding the importance of project schedule and budget is a big one. So now it goes out for tender, tenders close. Don't panic, okay? Don't panic. The next step you need to do is your consultant or your project manager needs to actually look at these submissions. Don't simply look at the bottom line. What you want to do is go through and see if they've actually bid the work that you've put out for tender. And there's no conditions on them saying that we'll do everything except for the grass on this, and that's what our price is. So that's where you get caught in some of these situations where you look at the bottom line, give it to the low guy, and he says, well, I wasn't going to do any of this work. So check the map, make sure there's no errors in it. Make sure he's got his bid bond, his consent to provide the bonding in there. That all that's there so that now you can hold them to his price. And like I mentioned, the conditions. What are the conditions? Maybe some of them you can live with. And he's going to lower price, but you can live with some of the conditions. You know the contractor. Confirm that the products that they're going to be producing is the right granite, it's the right caulking, the right waterproofing. They're not just picking ones out of that they want to do and they put it in their price, and then you're sort of stuck with it. So these are all things that should be in your bid form so that you can assess the bid not only by the price. The other thing is the distribution of the pricing. With your own bid form, you can actually see how they've set up their pricing. So what you want to do is watch that they haven't front-end loaded their bid. So all the demolition of everything is 75% of the bid, and 25% is to finish it off, because you know there's something's going on there. So you want to make sure that they've actually priced the job reasonably as they do it. And so your project manager, your consultant will then move in to make a recommendation to you, so that this is based on our assessment of this bid, this is the contractor you should be awarding this project to. So the bid review is done. The next thing is bid negotiation. So you'll typically call the low bidder in or the low 2 bidders in and saying, well, the project's either we're going to go ahead with it or it's a little bit over our budget. What can you guys do on your price, and what can we do to change things to make it easier so we still get what we want? And that's the next step that happens. And then you award the project, and then you start the construction, the contracts. So your project manager or your consultant should be preparing your contracts for you. And there's many contracts. The construction's contract document, CCDC, that's a committee that's been created with members from owners, contractors, and engineers. They work together to create a document that they believe is fair for all the parties. And there's actually 3 of them that you typically use for these kinds of projects. CCDC number 2, which is a stipulated price, so it's really a lump sum price contract. The conditions on that one typically are most favorable for owners. So if you have a choice on the type of contract you want to use, you should go with the CCDC number 2. CCDC number 3 is more of a performance-based cost plus. If you're not too worried about how much the cost is, but you really want them to perform and get the job done, that's the one you want to go for. And then the unit price one is just it seems to be too open-ended in terms of what the quantity of repair is. They're just pricing you with unit prices. Before you award the job, you don't know what your contract is going to be, what the value of the contract is until it's done and all the quantities are measured. So the CCDC2 is used, it's created, and there's also supplementary conditions that typically go through. Your lawyers will look at the conditions of the contract, and they'll want to remove some items which are pretty common. I think the CCDC contract has an item on it that you have to have a joint bank account with the contractor for the holdback. Well, those kind of things you get deleted. Or they have the option to see your financial statements before you award all those kind of stuff that you would delete in supplementary conditions. There's some standard ones that have been put in to protect all parties, but they really don't make sense in terms of what we do in terms of renewal of building. Yeah. So those are some of the things you get caught on sometimes. So the construction implementation. The biggest part is your construction manager, your prime consultant. Who's controlling the job for you? Who's running everything and who's got their fingers all over everybody else? He's the communication person. He's the direct contact with the contractor, and then he liaisons with the owner through either the property manager or the owners themselves. And so he's the middle person that creates the contact between everybody. He's the one that deals with any sub-consultants. So if you have a landscaping consultant or a mechanical consultant or elevator consultant, he's the one that coordinates through them. He deals with the material testing, making sure that you're actually doing the proper material testing. And the contractor, he deals with his material suppliers and his subcontractors. You shouldn't be dealing with any of those. That's his job to deal with that. And if he has an issue, then he passes it forward through your project manager and then up to the owner. And it really keeps the process clean and uniform. Like I mentioned, the project manager role during the construction, he's to review the construction, making sure things are getting done properly as per the specs, as per what you're actually paid for. And then contract administration. So he's the one that's going to look at all the submittals and the shop drawings, making sure that they're as per the documents. He's the one that's going to review the certificate of payment and create a report for you to say, yes, this certificate of payment is accurate, this is the work they've done, we recommend you release payment to them. So that's what they're doing. And they're going to monitor the schedule. They're going to be progress meetings and monitoring the schedule, keeping the contractor on his schedule and his budget. If there's any changes, making sure tracking any notice of proposed changes or change orders, making sure that that's been sorted out, and be the liaison between the owner and the contractor on this. You want to make sure that there is some line of communication, and so there's not any side things. Well, the owner told me to do this, that's why I didn't do it. You don't want any of that. You want everything to be nice and clean and less headaches for you, all of you. So I mentioned earlier the contract closeout. It is the easiest part of the project because it's done. There's small things left to do on the site, and then all the paperwork needs to be submitted, but it's the most difficult to get completed. It really comes to, at this point, you're at less than 3% of your contract needs to be completed. You've paid him everything except for the holdback, and so 3% of the contractor is not a big deal. So he drags his feet. And he will take his time until he can get to it, until it comes to a point where he has to get it done, and then eventually it'll get done. So it takes the longest and the most time consuming to push them through it. And then you can release the payments after that. And during the closeout, contract closeout and commissioning period, we want to make sure that the Construction Lien Act has been adhered to. And before you release the holdback payment, your lawyers have checked to make sure there's no liens on your properties. You want to make sure that WSIB legislation, you're getting all the certificates, substantial performance that's been issued, it's been published, all the subs, excuse me, all the subcontractors, once it's published, they have a certain period of time to put liens on the property, so that's protecting you before you pay your contractor. And then you release the holdback, the closeout documents, the warranties, the commissioning, all the paperwork on the specs, all the equipment that we put in, how to maintain them. All that needs to be submitted. And then there's a project completion certificates, and then the warranties and the guarantees. You need to obtain all your warranties. Even though you signed a contract that says he's going to give you a 5-year warranty on your waterproofing, you need to have some kind of warranty in your file so you don't forget that. The contracts may go to head office or may go somewhere, and then they get purged after 5 years or 3 years. And then so these can stay on site, and you have it. All the commissioning reports, all the maintenance manuals, how to maintain the equipment so you don't void the warranties. This is all stuff that they should be providing you at the end of the job and making sure that you get it. And it's really your consultant's role to do this when you hire the consultant, because like I mentioned in the beginning, you guys, the best thing you guys do is manage your buildings and make sure that they run well. And having to deal with all this minutia, something's going to fall through the cracks. Okay, so summarize everything. Is there anything you want to? No. Okay. A good team. Making sure you have a good team below you to make it happen. Accurate assessment of the project at the beginning, so that you're not spinning your wheels or finding unknowns that are going to be costly for you later. Establish realistic budgets so you're not surprised at the end when the tenders come in. A well-defined scope of work. The drawings need to be of good quality, specification, tender documents. Everything should be in line so that you're not dealing with costly extras. Project management during construction is a key. And then a good contractor. That's the other thing. If he's not doing well, he may be cheaper, but he's not doing well, then it's not going to go well. And it's unfortunate about that. There's a few things I just want to...
well, I did want to add
Go ahead.
About the team. I guess as our company's evolved, I think it's a lot of companies in the industry are finding that as the buildings get older and age, I guess I come from a time when property managers kind of did all of it. And I don't mean specifically the realm of capital planning, but as you say, we run our buildings, that's what we try to do. And that covers a lot of aspects. But what we found probably about 3-4 years ago was we actually hired an in-house project manager to help with the consultant, or at least to kind of from our end quarterback all of the various capital projects, because as buildings get older and older, you've got several of these things going on quite often for only a portion of the year. You've got to do it during the construction season. And you want it to go off as smoothly and as quickly as possible. And we were finding delays, and it might be invoicing, it might be there's some gaps in the contracts, but if we had a dedicated person, not only to get it off the ground and get it completed, but also to do some forward thinking, because what you want to do, getting back to one of the original points that Phil had, was having a capital program, having we call them BCRs, and trying to get a vision out 2-5 years on what you're facing. And that can help you when you're budgeting, it can help you when you're going for a refinancing, and trying to line it all up and plan it so that when you sit down with the owner or the ownership group and say, well, here's what we're looking at for next year, we have to do this, but here's what you should also expect in 3 years and 5 years. And that takes a lot of time and focus, and you have to engage the engineers to help you do that. And then you also know when you go from the BCR to get that condition assessment, when you know that you're probably 12 to 24 months out of doing a garage. Well, your BCR told you to do it 3 years ago. Quantities will change, the cost of labor and the cost of material will change, so you're going to want them to go in closer to the time that you want to do it, so that when you have a budget, the budget's realistic. Because it can shift hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars one way or the other.
Depending on how bad the problem gets and grows. But you're right, I recall 15 years ago when we were doing these projects, and it was management companies were getting 4 or 5% to do the management of the building, plus on top of their work, manage the CapEx projects. And they didn't want to do them, they didn't know how to do them, so they didn't do them. And things started to fall through the cracks, right? So, I think that's all we have. So if you have any questions or anything we can help you with, we're here.
I have a question on that. So when somebody's submitting a bid and bonding is a requirement, they'll submit a surety to consent to bond?
Correct.
Meaning that they can prove that they can be bonded.
Correct.
And then after they're awarded the contract, they'll actually provide bonding, performance bonding?
Correct. Performance bonding, yep.
Have you run into a situation where a project got started or a quarter of the way through where bonding was involved and the contractor failed to perform? Where does it go from there?
But you did get the bond?
This is one of mine.
Yeah, no, but you have the bond, and then he's not performing.
Correct.
Okay, so the first thing that happens is you have to give him notice that he's not performing and why, and he has to respond back to you how he's going to correct the problem. And the
in accordance with the CCDC?
That's right. in the CCDC, it tells you how many days he has to respond, how he's going to correct the situation. It could be as something that you're behind schedule, how are you going to get back on schedule? And so he's in breach of his contract. So that's the first step. Once he responds back, if it's a favorable response, then you move forward and monitor him again. If it's an unfavorable response and says, I can't do it, then that letter, together with your letter, goes to their bonding company. So he's basically said, I'm not doing the job, bye-bye. And then your letter with that letter goes to his bonding company, and then they jump in right away. And the bonding company, and the last thing they want, if they're a reputable company, is their bonding company to be involved. So once the bonding company is involved, they do step in, and then they will try to, their first step is to convince him to finish the job because of the bond, or he won't get bonds again. And if they are not successful there, then they step in with another contractor and finish the project under the bond.
Do you have control of the contractor they select?
No. That's the only downside of it.
And the whole period of time?
Well, everything has to be done as per the contract. Well, the period of time, by the time you get there, yeah, you've lost. That's right. So, yeah. That's right. So once a bonding company is called in and gets involved, steps in, that contractor typically won't get bonded again. So that's why that's the only carrot you have. But they will step in and they will bring their own contractor and say, we're going to get it done for you.
Have you had experience where you've been involved in a situation like that?
All the way to the point where, except they didn't bring in the other contractor. Yeah. Yeah, so the contractor turned around. And we have had another situation where the bonding company said, okay, they paid out the owner the rest of the contract and said, okay, you get someone else to do it. Our obligation's over. They've done that as well, when they don't want to deal with the actual project.
Would they have to pay the amount of the contract plus
The next bidder?
the next bid, or?
No, it'd be the amount of the contract. You're going to get your bond based on the amount of your contract. Yeah. So it's really your bid bond protects you with the next contractor. All right. So when the tenders come in, you get a bid bond, which guarantees by a bonding company that the contractor will do the job for that price. If the contractor eventually says, no, I'm not going to do it, you go back to his bonding company, and that bonding company will cover you for the difference to the next bidder.
Typically, what percent does that bonding add to the cost of the project?
About 1%, less than 1%, depending on the size. It's worth having, yeah. Yeah, gives you a peace of mind. And also the performance bond actually goes typically 2 years after the project's finished. So that bonding, so when you have a problem with under the warranty, if he's not there, you can get the bonding company, they have to step in. Yeah. Okay. And there's another bond called a material payment bond. And that covers you that he's going to pay his subs or his suppliers, his concrete guy. And so if he doesn't pay them, then you call in that bond, which is, all the bonding is typically about 1%. You call that bond in, and then they're responsible to pay the subcontractors who leaned your property.
When you do the construction of parking garages and you want them to get completely, are we mandated to give them another location for parking?
Everyone we have done, they've given another location and they've paid for that, but I'm not sure if you're mandated.
Well, yeah, mandated, I'm not sure it's mandated, in so much as having to provide it. I think it can get kind of sticky. I believe we've been fortunate in every case where we've had to go to adjacent landowners, because sometimes you get these buildings that are very tight, and there was really nowhere to put the cars. You've got street parking, pay for street parking if you can get it. A lot of times you have room on your property or an adjacent property, and then you'll have to pay the adjacent property owner. Otherwise, I think the only other case is where we weren't able to do it, we just had to phase it. So we really diminished the level. We're doing one now where it's a long project to begin with. It's ideal to be able to empty it out and do it all at once and just get her done, pull the Band-Aid off quickly, I like to say. But if you can't, because of physical restrictions with space, you have to phase it. So you do a certain level, and that can get complicated and actually typically drives the price up.
Yeah, it does.
Because of the phasing. But there are certain realities you have to live within.
Legally, we don't have.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I think it's, if you're charging for the service, and then you're not providing it, then you shouldn't charge for it. I think that would be sort of the
You
threshold.
can't charge, so once you take the service away, you're no longer allowed to charge.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is logical, but
And given property owners, if you don't have the space, like 60, 90 days out, scratch to
yeah,
repair.
basically, that we cannot provide this service.
But it was a lot of good.
I think what he's getting into is it a right that we have to provide it? And I think the legislation would allow, but you should check with your lawyer, that it would contemplate that if you're in this situation, you have to maintain the building. So it's something you can't provide, you can't provide. But you have to do your best to accommodate.
Typically goes based on the way the lease itself is written. And if it's just an additional thing that they're paying for, and you're not incorporating it as part of the rent, charging increases, et cetera, you're not likely to get a rebate against you at the rental time for.
But if you get free rent, you probably will. So charge for rent.
No, I know some people that are doing this apart, they lost them to different locations,
Mhm.
and they brought them back.
Again, a lot of it, I think a lot of that goes to goodwill. Again, just openly recognizing that you're causing a lot of disruption and discomfort for the tenant, and to eliminate future fallout, do what you can to accommodate them.
One other question.
Yes.
When you run a multi-project on a building, let's say you're doing this one, this one.
Same time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any contract or document that we can have signed? They are not interfering in the space of each other. So one of them, let's say, in elevator, the
Yeah.
other one outside is there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any special?
Yeah, because you want to avoid being the constructor and responsible for safety on the site. So if there's a physical separation between the workers, the different crews, then you're okay. Yeah, a physical, so your guy's working in the elevator, and the only thing he's doing is walking in the building, then that's okay. But if, for example, if you're doing the roof and the elevator, and he's going up on the roof all the time to do them, then you have an issue there. But as long as there's a physical barrier between the two contractors you have on site, they both have their own responsibility for their work areas and their site's safety, so you don't have to worry about it. I don't think there's a document that you would sign, that you can get signed that says one will be responsible for the other one. No, that's their work areas and it's physically separated.
You can always call the Ministry of Labor and ask them to provide a ruling
Mm-hmm.
on that, but never voluntarily call the MOL.
No, you don't. You don't want to do that. Any other questions? Anything more you want to add, Jeff?
Thank you very much, Philip and Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you.
We'd like to ask everyone to please remember to fill out your assessment questionnaire. And as you complete it, could you drop it at the registration desk? We'd really appreciate your feedback. Anybody who's going to the CN Tower for dinner, the bus is going to be leaving at 4:45 from the front of the building. If you have not signed up and you would like to go to the dinner, please sign up. There's still a way to get it. You can just check the registration desk and we can get you in. Thanks very much. And have a good day.
Thank you.
Good luck.
The RHB Insider Network is an RHB Inc. production. Publishers of RHB Magazine and the producers of RHB Newsreel.